I'm delighted, everyone, to have my dear friend and long-standing partner, Lucian Ulmanu, who created one of the most amazing locker companies. And maybe you can introduce yourself a bit. So, of course, you're CEO of ARKA Smart Lockers, but tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, Marek, for the introduction. I can tell a bit about myself. I really love, first of all, technology. I love technology. I love lockers. We have a background in automotive and aviation history.
And this is something really important because there's not many locker businesses that started in automotive. In automotive, it was all about being very precise, getting everything just right.
Sure, yes. And what I have to say also, thank you, Marek, for being here. You know, greatest companies in Europe are fighting over Marek to be their advisor.
So, listen, great to have you here. But more important than talking about us, let's talk about the topic. And the topic today: why do almost all out-of-home networks fail to achieve their full potential? And this is really amazing because I've probably personally seen about 150 networks. And why is it that one network can be making a EBITDA of 45% plus, 45% plus? And my friend Hank here will confirm that. And most of them are making less than half of that. And today we'll talk about some of the things that make that possible.
Yes.
So we're going to cover a bit of background and context. We'll talk about some important things: location and density.
And user experience, of course.
Absolutely. Customer experience is fundamental. And Lucian's going to help out and talk a bit about that.
Yes.
Your main area, of course, is?
Main area is the autonomous locker.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about operations and reliability, technology and integration. And each of those words is really, really important and often understated in the networks that operate. And finally, we'll talk about economics and something really, really critical. Our friends from MyFlexBox understand this: the power of partnership. Partnership is fundamental. And it's not in the past been a big deal, but today, to really make a locker or out-of-home network work, partnerships are fundamental.
Of course, Marek.
So, first of all, let's talk a little bit about why parcel locker networks matter. What do they do? Why are they so important?
Well, it's so convenient for the end user not to wait for the courier. And as far as I know from my customers, one courier is like 600% more efficient when delivering to a locker of the parcels than door-to-door delivery. We know that in a few years, door-to-door delivery will be a luxury delivery.
Well, absolutely. For some of you might know, but if you don't know, a very efficient locker courier, how many parcels do you think, this is a test to see who's awake, how many parcels, not you, Hank, because I know you know, how many parcels can a super efficient out-of-home locker courier deliver? No, you cannot either, Marek. Any guesses? 1,000. 1,000. Actually, that's a pretty good guess, but actually a bit more. So this is a real story. I'm a bit of a fanatic about lockers, and I ask my local courier every time I see him, how many parcels did he deliver that day? On a very, should we say, on a peak day, not on a off-season day, about 1,500 couriers. Well, one man, one route. And to make it even better, this is the thing that I was shocked about. How many lockers does this guy deliver to? Any guesses on that? Actually, let's have some guesses. You will be shocked. So this is my InPost courier in Warsaw. How many lockers does he deliver to?
Something about Zefix.
20. Very, very good guess, but wrong. So a little bit too many.
Yes. You may.
Okay, 15. Right. So about 10 lockers Every day he goes several times, delivering 1,500 parcels to 10 lockers.
Not all of them for you.
Not all of them are for me, no. Although I did get some lockers. So, but what's most important, and this is what we're going to talk about today, and this is where Lucian's going to help me. Most networks underperform. Most networks do not have 1,500 parcels delivered on a good day. On a bad day, by the way, a bad day is about 800 parcels per courier. Which, by the way, compared to the best, when I was at Amazon, the best ever to-door delivery courier would do, and this was absolutely the top of the pops, around about 200 parcels, just to put it in perspective. So anyway, let's move forward because we're going to talk about things like weak density, more customer experience, and above all, and this is the thing that is really missed most, is partnerships. And we'll talk about all those elements together and how you can be successful in avoiding the mistakes that others are making. So we'll do a bit of a double act. I'm going to cover some of the slides more. Lucian will cover some of them more. This one's mine, I think. Location, location, location. And this doesn't only relate to property. This actually relates to parcel lockers. And I think this is probably one of the most important factors. If you think about it yourself, if your locker, and I'm going to steal a phrase from bpost, if it's slipper distance, our friends from bpost will like this, of course. If it's slipper distance, it's almost like a home delivery. And that's really, really important. And for me, slipper distance is 250 or 300 meters. So if it's that close, it's almost like a home delivery. And without that, a lot of people said to me, well, why did InPost, for example, why did they initially fail in the UK and succeed in Poland? It's really simple. In the UK, with a population of about 69 million, they had initially about 1,500 lockers. So the distance was a long way away. And in Poland, with a population of about 38 million, they had 3 or 4 times more lockers. So location is critical. Visibility, accessibility. So that's another thing. We have a friend here from Mexico, and I visited a network called OXXO. Can you imagine? In front of every store, they had 5 or 6 parking spaces. The stores were open 24/7. They were safe. I cannot imagine a better place to be a locker at, because accessibility, visibility, security are all really important. One final thing before I move to the next slide. At the beginning, with some exceptions, you will never, ever have enough lockers to get the density. So you have to support them with PUDOs. And that's where partnership is important. And look at InPost, who, and I'm sorry I keep talking about InPost, but these are the guys who I think were the precursor of modern day locker technology. In France, they realized that they couldn't get the density and proximity with just lockers. So what did they do? They bought Mondial Relay with about, I think, 10, 11,000 PUDOs, and they supplemented them with lockers. So whatever else you forget about today, and all my friends here who run locker networks will love this, it's about having a lot of lockers out there. You start with PUDOs and then you develop it with lockers, because you cannot make a successful network, and this is going to make you as well, with 50 or 100 lockers. You need, in most places, thousands of lockers. You're right. Now, the second thing is customer experience, and I'm going to hand over to Lucian.
Yes. From our experience until now, the best lockers are the lockers which make the use for the final customer the easiest. You don't put your customer to install special apps. It has a big touch screen. It has multiple ways to open the drawer. So you can have a QR code scanner, a touch screen with a keypad, and that's about it. If you force your customer to install an app to figure out the way Bluetooth works, you will have most likely a resistance from the market. And we have seen experiences like that. So in our opinion, yes, you can, it's very important to be in maximum 5 minutes from the home of the customer. But when it arrives there, everything has to move quick. He's impatient. He wants to get the parcel and leave. So the flows on the touch screen need to be really, really easy for them. They don't want to see a lot of things complicated. They just want to type in the code or scan a QR code and open. And I think my good friends here from MyFlexbox or Fan Courier, they have seen this. The boxes are opening extremely fast. The customers take the parcels and leave. So this is the customer experience. It's very important because the interaction has to be in a minimal way from the locker to the customer. Everything has to go pretty fast.
And I think this is something really important because Lucian at the beginning said something that I really, really believe in. You cannot tell the customer what to do. He chooses what to do. And often people say, well, you don't need the peripherals, you don't need this. If we look at the past, when you try to educate the customer what he should do, it fails. When the market went digital, Polaroid, which was a hugely successful company, failed. If you look at more recently, in my opinion, people are looking at electric vehicles. You can have the best combustion engine, but if the consumer wants electric, you have to listen to the consumer. And I think this is really, really important. Yes. And now, Lucian, this is another one which I think is really, really important. Machines have to work because there's nothing worse than going to a machine that's not working. And this is somewhere where I think ARKA has a real specialty.
But yes, we have a very good specialty here. The machine have to be really reliable. This is very important. You have to, first of all, when it comes to energy autonomous lockers, you need energy security. You don't ever need to think in the peak season or minus 15, minus 20 degrees or in the cloudy part of the
Listen, you have to tell the guy about this because their energy cells are not solar based. They're based on some kind of radiation, you told me. But
solar based, yes. Radiation comes, of course, from solar. So the solar panel can can take a lot of direct radiation, but also sometimes indirect radiation. It's very important on how complex is the locker. If the locker have a lot of peripheral components, then of course you need more energy and more autonomy. However, our lockers right now that we have on the market in Germany, in Slovakia, they are from 90 to 100% battery all the time. So this topic for all of our clients is not on the table anymore. Energy security is achieved.
Maybe I'll just say, for someone who's not really technological, the way that you explained it is solar energy, and this is maybe better than what I said at the beginning. You don't need the sun to be there, but if you have the solar radiation, it means that it will work.
But yes, this is debatable because first of all, sometimes we consider that the sun is not shiny sufficiently enough. However, if you look into the reporting systems, you can see that the energy production system is still producing some energy. And when the lockers are in sleep mode, they are charging, even if outside is not like summer bright. So this is very important when we are speaking about energy autonomy of the lockers. And when we are considering what peripherals should be installed on the locker. This is why we can afford to have a 12-inch touchscreen on the locker, on the autonomous locker. Also, we can afford to have the CCTV camera, alarm system, a router can be always on if the client wants this.
Tell me something, because I remember when I visited your factory, you were showing the fact that because the machine has to be robust, weatherproof, handle-proof. If I'm not mistaken, you're one of the very few companies that have 2 layers of skin on the doors. The doors are not going down straight so that the water ingress doesn't create risks when there's a
Pre-device. So the tile type doors, the way we are building those doors, make that the drop of water from the upper door not to to fall immediately on the second door. So when the night comes, you don't have a bridge of ice between the doors. This is quite important. Also, yes, you mentioned the double skin door, meaning that our doors always have two metal sheets. They are really robust, really strong,
Which is, by the way, quite unusual.
and this is why our lockers are very heavy on the front. And you can see all the lockers have a backpack behind them. The backpack is full of concrete. We have concrete in the back or and under the locker. And this is why the lockers also resist. They are usually 130 kilograms of steel more than usual.
If you want a locker that is safe as a tank, you know where to go.
Yes. Usually you can reach even 600 kilograms for 2 units. This means that you will have 130 kilometers wind resistance. We have the lockers tested, certified without any anchoring. It's very important because usually whenever in our country, for example in Romania, whenever we have a red code for storm, we don't have lockers that are pushed down by the wing. And my client here, Fan Courier, has more than 200,000 and 400 to 2,500 lockers, some of them big, some of that small. And in all the history, I think we have just one locker which was basically an open field and has fallen because the wind was much bigger than 130 kilometers per hour. So from 2,500 lockers, only one fell in 3 years. So this is very important because we are seeing a lot of issues in this area from other companies, and this is very dangerous. If a few hundred kilograms of steel fell on someone or on a car or something like that,
I'm not convinced that the customer experience would be very good in that scenario. But look, one last thing that I'm really interested in is remote monitoring and predictive maintenance. What are you doing in that space?
so remote monitoring. We have a lot of systems that allow us to access remote the lockers. This is very important. Some of the clients want to use their software. Some of the clients want to give us full responsibility and use our software, our lockers, our firmware, everything. When everything is in one hand, you have just one responsible party. No blaming on installation crew, on producer, on software producer, and so on. So it's very important to have the ability to control your fleet all over the Europe remotely, to update firmware, to update software, to update everything that you need. We can do that. Predicted maintenance, usually there is no predicted EITs. We don't actually need it. We go when something breaks. For Romania, for example, and again, my client can confirm that we have only five technicians that cover 2,500 lockers. So we are pretty stable, but in that area, we have done everything ourselves. So we didn't rely on third parties. Without everything ourselves, and this is the result.
As you know, I'm a big fan of AI, and I think this is going to be the next thing. Imagine a machine that tells you, hey, I'm going to break down so it doesn't happen. And that's going to be the next thing. And I think these guys will have it. Let's move on. Technology and integration. Integration, I think, I've always said that IT is the secret sauce that makes a network fail or succeed. But one of the key things is integration. You can have a great system, but if it takes 6 months to integrate, most companies will say, hey, this isn't for us. Talk a little bit, please, about that, Lucian.
Well, lately we have managed to put together a very, very competent software team, and we can manage integrations and customizations of the software. This is very important, but also when it's not our software and the customer has its own software, like our clients might like POS or Parcel+Post, then our team acts as a support for their software crew. And it's really important because our team knows the lockers, knows the electronics, and it's quite essential that the partner, because you said it's not just about client and supplier here. It's a partnership. It's really important that the partner has also a competent crew, a competent technical team. We know our electronics, our software, and if we have someone which really understands and is capable to test, then you will have a stable network and a good customer experience. If not, a lot of issues can appear. It's very important, this step. A lot of people don't concentrate a lot on integration, on the way the software from a third party works with our hardware or any other, and this is a source of issue.
And I think this is one of the really most important things. I've seen so many networks fail because the integration was difficult, it took too much time. And I've seen so many succeed because it was a dream integration. Let's move on to the final thing. And I think this is really, really important. Lockers are an incredible tool if they're full of parcels. Lockers are a cash burn machine if they're empty. And this is where the smart guys think about how can we bring in parcels. That can be via partnerships. Of course, surprise, surprise, I'm a big fan of open networks, which means that together we create something efficient. And that's one of the ways to get this utilization, because that's one of the most important secret sources to creating the 45% EBITDA versus 15-20. But one other important thing, and I'll just sell a little bit of that secret sauce. It's not enough to have the network being open. It's very important one courier delivers. Hypebox, one of the biggest networks in the world, is not making that much money because you actually have 20, 30 different couriers going to the locker. So instead of the efficiency that you have like the InPost courier, one guy delivering 1,000, 1,500 parcels, you're getting maybe 20, 30 guys delivering 2 or 3 parcels each. And that's really, really important. The other thing is in terms of cost. Machines have CapEx, so you need to have a machine that's good enough. You don't need a Rolls-Royce. In some cases, it's good enough to have a Volkswagen. And good manufacturers like these guys will have various options for you. But the really good players also look at maintenance, other issues. And finally, I talked about it earlier, PUDOs are a really good way to complement if you don't have the density and coverage. And most of the really successful networks early on were able to leverage that. And this is where partnerships with retailers are important. I've seen various examples. We have our friend from Chile here, and they have, Blue Express have an incredible network of petrol stations and retail points. Probably the biggest example I've seen, we have a friend from Mexico, is OXXO from Mexico. 25,000 retail locations as PUDOs. Can you imagine? Mexico's a big country, but if you have 25,000 locations you can make PUDOs out of, it's a pretty good start. And I think one of the big things that we miss is we forget about the fact that actually partnerships can be really good. Sometimes they came through pain. So in Germany, who would have imagined DPD and GLS coming together in a partnership? Incredible. And it happened because of the necessity. But wouldn't it be better if it happened in advance, that people planned it? And partnerships, I think, can be a really important key to success, especially if you already have a dominant network. So my friends from InPost probably won't like me saying this, but the only way, in my opinion, to challenge InPost in Poland is now for all of the others to come together in one efficient alternative network. Final thing, I have to say this, of course. Partnership with experts is important. So many people go ahead, and I kid you not, I have seen people buy several hundred lockers without actually doing the homework. And some of the best examples are buying lockers which are unable to have peripherals that are necessary in the market, either legally. Sometimes they buy 50 machines, which is economically impossible to make work. and then surprised that it doesn't really give them the results. So I think it's very, very important, the cost in terms of a whole network picture where you're potentially investing several tens of millions to take some good advisors on board can save you a lot more than the few tens or even if it's hundreds of thousands that you invest there. And then finally, I got to say this. I was at a conference yesterday. We've launched a big report in Poland with Rzeczpospolita, which is a big financial newspaper. And there was a lot of talk about ecological and being green, and they were talking about electric vehicles and other things. One of the best ways to go green is to go out of home. We could reduce about 2/3 of carbon in urban areas and about 90% in rural areas with an efficient out-of-home network. So, the writing's on the wall. What makes it really, strange for me, Lucio, is that so many networks are out there and they don't seem to look at this data and historic learning. But hopefully after today, you'll have all seen some of the things and it will get your mind thinking, well, what did I do? Did I do all of this? Could I do a bit more? Finally, I've said this before, lockers and PUDOs are great together. And for those of you who've heard from me before, I like military history. And in an army, if you have just tanks, you're not going to be successful. If you have just infantry, you won't be successful. If you put infantry and tanks together, that can be very powerful. And in our example, I believe that lockers are the tanks and PUDOs are the infantry. If you put the two together, it can be very, very powerful. So, conclusion. Location and density. Whoops, let me go back. Customer experience, as Lucian explained. Operations and reliability. Technology and integration. Sustainability, good partnerships. Think big. Start small. Pilot and test, which a lot of people don't do. And then scale fast.
About that, while scaling fast, we have seen a trend in the market where right now more than 70-80% of the lockers are energy independent lockers. In our case, solar powered and battery lockers. So when it comes to carriers or independent networks, we've seen that finding locations for the lockers which are independent energetically is much easier. Also, someone could argue that the lockers are more expensive, but total cost of ownership, when you consider 15, 20, 25 euro per month for electricity for 8 years or 10 years, when you consider how expensive is a crew that stays longer to install a locker, classic locker, or 1,000 or 2,000 euro just to bring the power cable to a classic locker, then you find that the locker which has energy independence is more suitable for very large scale ups. Of course, it really depends on the use cases. Some of the locations are better with our power cable locker.
So here we have it. You need different choices, different options. Perhaps the most important part of the session, I promised to all of you that there will be Q&A. We can't promise to have all the answers. I'm sure the questions will be good, and we'll do our very best. Castitis.
Hi, boss. And Marek, I already 2 questions on the way. The first is very simple. Based on the data, based on the knowledge, what we related and so on. The most accessible distance, locker and the consumer. What's your best estimate? What is the number? This is the first question.
So first of all, we worked together for many years in my past life. Kastytis, I'm now proud to say, is the top boss of Lithuanian Post. So I should say boss to you. In terms of the distance, honestly, I think it depends. So it's going to be different in an urban area and a rural area. The guys from PostNord did some really good work a few years ago, and it may have changed now, but at the time, they said that an optimal distance is about 300 meters. A distance that is acceptable but probably borderline in an urban area is about 500 meters. And the further you go from an urban area, surprise, surprise, the distance, it can be longer. As I said before, I love the phrase that bposts developed, which is slipper distance. And I think we have to think what for each of us is slipper distance. I have to say one thing for me, I don't know how it is with you, but my nearest locker is 250 meters. I've been incentivized to go to an alternative locker, which is 500 meters. And honestly, half a euro or €0.75 of a euro doesn't cut it with me. How close is your nearest locker?
3 minutes away. 3 minutes away. We have multiple options here at the home, but I always try to choose the lockers from Fun Courier because even if it's farther away, it's done by our company, and I just have such a pleasure to go to them and pick up my parcels.
So with the exception of being, I'm not a producer of lockers, so I can choose whichever. I choose the nearest one. But of course it has to work because for me, the locker, the one I have, allows me to use an app. As Lucian said, I can use a pin pad if I need it. I can use anything. So I hope that answers the question. Another question, too. We've got a... Kastytis, you're really busy today.
No, question number 2. Chicken or leg, or the question is very simple. Parcel of the locker. What is first?
The parcel or the locker? So for me, it's all about the parcels. You don't have the parcels, the locker will fail. There is nothing better to lose a fistful of dollars than an empty locker network. And that's why I think partnerships are so important. And I'm talking to some of our friends who have developed incredible networks. When I always say to them, it's not about pride, it's about efficiency. And some companies are fortunate. So InPost in Poland was really fortunate because for various historic reasons, they were able to fill their lockers without having too many partnerships. But most other networks have to open up, and it has to be a real partnership, because the other thing about partnership, it's very easy to say, yeah, we're open, it's a partnership. But quite often that partnership is a little bit unbalanced. Partnership really means that you have to be open, the rules have to be the same. And one of the reasons that quite often these so-called open networks fail is because it's not real partnership. The terms are different for the owner of the network, which means that people only use it if they're forced to. And I think it's really, really important this is thought through.
I want to add something here, if you know, Mark. I think in this case, the hardware and of course the software, but the hardware is quite important because a locker which has a lot of the classic peripherals like the touch screen and the QR code scanner and everything that a carrier needs will help you make a partnership. If you go with a minimalist locker, when you don't have the ability to even to guarantee the energy security in peak season, it will be very difficult for you as a carrier or open network to make a partnership with the big players.
And that's a very good point, because it's, of course, you need to have the thinking, the strategy, the openness, but you also have to have the right machines and the right software behind the machines to make it work. Any other questions? Come on, don't be shy. Olivier, I knew I could count on you. So we moved from Lithuania to Chile.
So we have PUDOs, as you know, and a couple of thousands of PUDOs and lockers. My question is about peak season and redirection. So how do you balance the size of the network, so peak, no peak, and redirection, which is really painful from the customer's
So first of all, as you heard before, I'm a big fan of PUDOs because one of the things that PUDOs do, a locker is a piece of metal. You can do things to give it more capacity. You can have multi parcel cells. You can incentivize customers to pick up more frequently. And those are really great things if you've got the right software and machines. But PUDOs actually can expand very fast, and you can have pop-up PUDOs. So I think the best way to give a customer experience is to actually use PUDOs. So a customer, I think, will be less unhappy if their locker's not available, if a PUDO is 5 meters away and gives them maybe not quite the same service, but it's close. A worse alternative, in my opinion, and I'll hand over to Lucian because he may have some ideas, but the worst idea is you tell the customer to go a kilometer down the road because your locker is full.
Yes. This is one of the issues. You redirect a parcel when the locker is full, or when the parcel doesn't fit in your drawer. In our experience, the second issue, when the parcels doesn't fit, should be eliminated from the design. So you should have big enough S drawers, big enough N drawers, before thinking of how many you have. Of course, there is this situation where if you have larger S drawers, you will have you won't have so many, but you could have them full, always full, and then you have to redirect the parcel to another locker or to a PUDO. But the worst case is when your locker is not full and the parcel doesn't fit in. So you need to avoid this situation from the design.
And I think one other thing that's becoming quite popular, so this is a true story. 2015, when I was on the supervisory board of InPost, I said, guys, why don't we do drop boxes? Won't work. Took 10 years. I was a little bit ahead of my time, but now everyone is talking about drop boxes. And I think that's another tool that helps make things work better. So, one of the things I think that's really important is you cannot say, okay, we've made it, we don't need to change. Every day is day one. Every day you need to think, what can I do better? What can I do differently? And the players that do that will succeed. When I was a young guy, I looked at companies like UPS and FedEx, and these were the gurus. These were the guys who were changing the world. Today, it's not those companies. I call them legacy carriers. Today, it's players like Amazon or logistics. It's players like Vinted, which is not even a last mile company with Vinted Go. It's players like InPost. It's players like Flexbox, of course, my Flexbox, who are changing the world. And I think that's really important.
And we need to support them. And we are here for you guys.
Absolutely. Did we answer the question? I was really worried we wouldn't get questions. It's pretty good. Wonderful.
Hello. I have a question for my next episode. Why did you guys choose?
We have to hand over the...
Thank you. Great question. So when we started looking into next-gen lockers, that was like probably 3 to 4 years ago. The only next-gen was modern back then was the Bluetooth next-gen generation. And for us, as being an agnostic, that was not really the way of working. Like as Marek explained, in terms of customer experience, it's super critical, like to give the customer the right to choose, and in order to have a really good experience. And for us, it was really necessary to have a scanner and a full display, because we have so many different processes from all these different carriers, and we can't just put them all in one app or use different apps, and then the customer stands in front of our locker. Oh, which app do I need now? Or GPS, I need this one, and that wouldn't work. So for us, it was really important to have a full-fledged next-gen locker. And back then, there wasn't even the hardware available. So it was really the most difficult part for us was to really find a partner which is actually capable of doing all that. And then we can contacted with Lucian, and then we started to talk, and he showed me the hardware, like I think 3 years ago on the Expo, and like the lockers, they were generating energy while they were standing in here in the building. That was really impressive. And so that's when we started to iterate on the hardware.
And yeah, we screened the whole market because we really needed these next-gen lockers, but we couldn't find any. And yeah, thanks to ARKA, we have this next-gen lockers with all the features in it.
So the radiation that I talked about obviously does work. It does. Thank you so much.
And we're in Austria, so we have a lot of snow, a lot of bad days.
We even have lockers in Canada, prepared for Canadian winters.
Maybe 2 more questions and then we wrap up. Of course, if anyone afterwards would like to ask Lucian a question or me a question, feel free. You can find us also on LinkedIn. But maybe 2 more questions if anyone has them. Hank has a question. Hold on, with my hand over the...
Question to Lucian. Lucian just says, you must be convinced of the quality of your products. And I mean, they're here to sell something or to demonstrate that you're the best. How is it possible that on the one hand you say a locker always has to work, and you only have 5 mechanics in Romania to repair workers? Is it really that good?
Thanks about this question.
How long does it take to repair one? Because there's a disease to do it as well.
Of course, first of all, it's about what type of damage it has. Romania, it's not a small country, but it's not as big as Germany. So, yes, it is that good. It is that stable. We don't have so many fatal failures of the lockers to need 20 or 50 people like other carriers to maintain 2,000 locker networks. You can imagine that if we needed 50 people to fix the lockers, then we have so many issues that our customers here, Courier, for example, wouldn't hire us anymore, wouldn't be here at my speech. So yes, it is stable. We need it to be stable because you need an army of people to maintain a locker network that doesn't work. And God forbid, it doesn't work in peak season.
I think it speaks for you, for the quality of your products. Second question I had is about the deployment of the lockers. What is the difference in the deployment costs between an independent locker, a locker that runs on the platform, and a locker that is connected to the power grid?
Well, the way we work is by doing these units of 2 columns, either a solar power or a plug-in locker. The difference mainly comes from what our customers need to do when they have to bring the power cable. So it doesn't take too much time to install a big locker because they leave from the factory almost turnkey. We have a lot of tests, and when we load the lockers, they are almost ready to use. So the technicians in the field just put one unit next to the other, level it, make a battery of tests, connect everything that needs to be connected, and then it's good to go.
I'll just add one thing, because I remember from our visit to Chile, there are some places where even if you want an electric locker, there are going to be challenges. So petrol stations, you have various regulations about where you can have electricity and so on. So the reality is, I talked about infantry and tanks or lockers and PUDOs, but actually even within lockers, if you just have one type of locker, I think you're going to be suboptimal. You have to have both.
You need both for rapid expansion because it became quickly a real estate issue here. The networks are expanding, and sometimes it's about which locker is the closest to your home when you order something.
Last question. You've had 2, so you don't get any more, Henk. Is there one last question here? We have a...
So your last advice in your presentation was scale parts. Do you have some figures that might?
Yeah, so first, well, honestly, the best example in terms of fast scale, and you guys, if I saw where you're from, you could do it easily because you got so many PUDOs. the only way to really scale fast is to have the PUDOs. So if I take InPost's learning, InPost started in France with, I think, something like 1,500, 2,000 lockers, and they failed. InPost then bought Mondial Relay, and they didn't have lockers, but they had, I think, 11,000 PUDO points. Scale fast. They then supplemented them with lockers. So you get the best of both worlds. They had probably 1,000 lockers plus 11,000 PUDOs. They scaled fast. Now, in terms of the lockers, the really good thing, there are two schools. One is the Amazon type school where you run the data, you look at, where exactly are going to be the heat maps. Then there's the Marek school, which is a little bit more old fashioned. You look at the data, you see what is actually happening, where people are picking up the parcels and PUDOs, and you say when the PUDO gets to the point, and typically when you get over 50 parcels for PUDO, it becomes troublesome. Although, actually, out of interest, anyone guess what the record for a PUDO, one day for a normal PUDO, not a professional parcel store, but a PUDO, what the record I've seen is per day of parcels? Any guesses? Gary, come on.
1,002 bucks.
Well, the 1,200, Gary says, and I'm pleased to welcome my partner from Last Mile Profits here. 1,200. The best I saw was actually about 1,100, which is pretty close. But it's amazing. But generally speaking, most PUDOs will do up to, say, 50 if it's not a professional parcel store. And I would say that's the way to expand. You grow fast with the PUDOs, you enhance them with lockers, you do your planning and budgeting so that when you go to ARKA and order, that you're really able to progress, and you give them advance notice for the orders, because that's the other thing. These things are not produced overnight. I think at the end of our time for now, but please, if anyone has any questions, feel free to come to Lucian or to me. You can find us on LinkedIn.